Hi everybody, my name is Peter Maliaris. I'm a professor and physiotherapist specialising in tendinopathy. I wanted to do a video today about Achilles tendon rupture, and specifically what are the key parts of rehabilitation for Achilles tendon rupture that you need to think about. And this could be both for clinicians or if you're a patient that has suffered an Achilles tendon rupture. This is really important information. What I've found is that the protocols for Achilles tendon rupture are pretty silent on a number of really important parts of the rehabilitation process. So my motivation to do this video was to provide some information about how we can bridge those gaps and really provide exercise rehabilitation that is going to be able to recover you back to doing the things that you want to do. Achilles tendon rupture is a really catastrophic injury. It can take, often 6 months, 9 months, 12 months to recover. We know that people can either have surgery or non-surgical care, and the benefits of each or the differences between them are not very much. So it does sometimes depend on your preference. There are a few small differences. I'll do a separate video on that. If people would like to hear about that, just let me know in the comments. But what I want to talk about today, and this is just going to be a brief video, is rehabilitation. So there are lots of protocols out there, and the surgeon that you might see, or physiotherapist or physical therapist that you might see, might have adapted or modified one of those protocols. Most of the protocols are fairly similar on certain things, like we need to immobilize the foot into toes down position, which we call plantar flexion, for a certain period of time initially. We need to make sure that it's immobilized in a boot for a certain period of time. There's also differences in the types of boots you use, the immobilization that you use. There's differences in when people can start to weight bear. So when you're told that it's okay to start weight bearing with the boot on. There's also lots of other differences, and these are the ones that I want to focus on today. So today I'm going to talk about two things. I'm going to talk firstly about the exercise that people do when they're in the boot. So this is a really important time to start to load the tendon and to make it into a normal tendon again. So when you've got a tendon that's completely ruptured, you've got these ends that are trying to form again into a normal tendon. And that requires some level of stimulus, some level of loading. So you do need to load the tendon so that it can start to form into a normal tendon. That's how the cells know what they need to do. So it's critical in those early phases to provide loading. Most of the rehabilitation protocols that are out there, even though they call themselves accelerated, and you might be on an accelerated program, they're the most common ones these days. Gone are the days where we mobilize people for weeks and weeks and weeks and tell them not to do anything. The accelerated programs, you're weight bearing faster, you're doing exercise faster. However, the problem with these accelerated programs, they're not specific on how much loading you should be doing when you're in the boot. When you're in the boot, there are safe ways that you can be loading your tendon. And what we generally do is get people to load in a plantar flex position, again, in that safe heel off the ground position. That's a really safe position because the tendon is shortened and you're starting to then load the tendon. Now, you can do this in a number of different ways. The way that I generally like to do it is in a seated calf position. So you're sitting and you've got some weight on your knee, your heel is lifted up off the ground, and you're starting to put progressively more load onto the knee. That's a really, really good position, and you need to progress enough to provide stimulus for the tendon to adapt and to become a normal tendon, or a functional, I should say, tendon again. So that's the number one thing. Progression, what we often find is that progression of exercise when people are in the boot is far, far, far less than what it could be and what it should be. People are worried about worried about causing problems to the healing tendon, but actually it's the opposite. You're going to help the healing tendon if you do some loaded in safe positions. Okay, so that's the first point that I wanted to make. The second point about Achilles rehab for Achilles tendon rupture is when you first come out of the boot. Okay, so this can be anywhere between sometimes even 6-7 weeks, but usually about 10 to 12 weeks. People are out of whatever boot they're being immobilized in. And I think this is a really, really critical time. It's a critical time because you come out of the boot and not very strong, yet all the protocols are pretty much saying start to mobilize, start to walk out of the boot. And they do recommend things, in fairness, like, wearing the appropriate shoes and wearing heel raisers in your shoes as well. But for most people, that progression of walking is far, far, far too quick and can cause compromise to the tendon. Now, by compromise, I should be clear, I'm not talking about rupture. You're not going to unlikely to re-rupture it, but you might cause other problems like over-lengthening or elongation of the tendon. That's probably the most common issue that people have following Achilles tendon rupture. The tendon becomes long. In some cases too long. It becomes therefore weaker, less able to generate force. It's harder for people to do the things they used to do before. So that's a really important thing to try and get on top of with your rehabilitation. So that's the second thing. So the advice when people are getting out of the boot is don't just get out of the boot and just start walking based on comfort, which is what a lot of people would advise. The advice is recover some strength before you start walking. As you were walking before. So as long as you want to, and with the gait pattern that you were walking before. So what I tend to do is modify the gait pattern that people are using, the walking style they're using to reduce load in short term. Make sure they are using protective things like the heel wedge and appropriate shoes, but really have some criteria for recovery of strength and forces in the tendon that allow the tendon to be strong enough for walking. Okay, so that's the second thing that I think is probably, they're two key things. There's probably others as well, and I might do some other videos, but if people are interested in Achilles rupture, please, by all means, just email me or put a comment in the descriptions about things that you'd like to hear about, parts of the rehab, any other tips, and I'm very happy to talk about those as well. I'm currently leading a group in Australia, looking at trying to develop a new rehabilitation approach for Achilles tendon ruptures that is going to be considering some of these aspects as well. So this is a sort of quite a long research process, but we're starting that process now. So I'll try and provide some updates. The first step is a survey, which we're going to do very, very soon. So hopefully that was helpful. If you liked it, please consider subscribing or giving a thumbs up. And if you have any questions at all, as I say, just put them in the comments. See you next time.